Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Purveyor in Fallout 76. It's time for our weekly run. We're going to spend 1,000 scrip on 3-star legendary ranged weapons and see if Mama Mumbles has any love for us. We had a couple of good runs recently, so we might be due for a dud here, but we'll see how we do. We'll head on inside, check out the first roll. Before we do that, remember, if you like videos like this and you want to see more, go ahead and subscribe, hit the like button, leave a comment, follow me on Twitter. Everybody knows the drill at this point. Okay, obligatory self-promotion out of the way. Let's head on in and see Mama Mumbles. All right, we'll head on inside and look at a very interesting sign. We'll head on over to Mama Mumbles and see that the mystery pick event is actually going on right now, but you'll notice I'm still doing 3-star ranged weapons because the mystery pick just isn't good for me on this character. It makes no sense for me to roll for a bunch of armor and things that I just don't need. So we're going to stick with going with what we want, which is 3-star ranged weapons, and the first one we got is a fixer. Let's take a look at this one. So the effects we have: Zealots, 30% damage to Scorched, 10% damage while aiming, and 250 damage resistance while reloading. So let's talk for a minute about the fixer and what makes it so desirable. In addition to being able to get 3 legendary effects on it like we see here, it also has sort of a built-in, let's call it 2.5 unstarred legendary effects. 1.5 of which I guess are noted on the description. First is improved stealth. Basically what that gives you is an extra harder to detect while sneaking buff. It increases your stealth, and that's going to be really good, especially for full health players. If you're running an unyielding build at low health with a full set of unyielding armor, you're honestly probably not going to notice much of a difference. But if you're a full health stealth rifleman or commando, that extra little buff can make a big difference for you, so that's important to remember. The half star, if you will, is faster sneaking movement speed. I call that a half star because if you're a low-level player who doesn't have Speed Demon, then you may notice that. You may notice that you can move a little faster while you're sneaking. But once you get up in levels and you have some mutations and you have Speed Demon, you'll notice that it doesn't actually do anything. So that's why I call it a half star, if you will, because for some players, it's going to have a benefit. For most, it's not. Now, the one that's completely unmentioned here is the fact that the fixer is essentially a combat rifle. It has the same mods as a combat rifle. It looks like a combat rifle. It works like a combat rifle, but it does 20% more base damage than a combat rifle. So basically, a fixer is almost a 5-star combat rifle. You've got extra damage, you've got extra stealth, and for some players, you've got extra sneaking movement speed. For this one, sadly, our primary effect is damage to Scorched, which is not ideal, but now that we have more stash weight, you can save some of these situational effects, and for the new daily ops that are coming up that do feature Scorched, well, maybe that's not the worst thing to do. Extra damage while aiming doesn't hurt anybody unless you're a VATS build, in which case that's really not something you're going to benefit from. And 250 DR while reloading, that is a nice perk to have here. If there's ever a time when you're vulnerable, especially during the current daily ops, where you're not in stealth and enemies are constantly shooting at you, boosting that up when you're most vulnerable is not a bad thing to do. All right, we've talked about this weapon for long enough. Let's move along. And we've got, it's going to be one of those days again, isn't it, Mama Mumbles? It's going to be one of those days where you give me cool weapons with cool second stars and crappy first stars. That's what this is going to be. I see how it is. So we have an Assassin's Flamer with 10% damage to humans, which does include other players if you're using it in PvP. 25% faster fire rate and +1 perception. So the Flamer is an interesting weapon. It can be really effective, especially with faster fire rate. It's got a really solid DPS, and most NPCs have some fire resistance, but not a ton. So there's that. Extra perception isn't really doing anything for us with this one. Chances are you'll run this with a heavy gunner build. You'll be hip firing it a lot, so there's not a lot you're getting out of extra perception here. The big effect, of course, is Assassins, which is your primary, and, you know, doing 10% damage to humans is nice and all, but it's pretty unnecessary. Human NPCs are super squishy, they die really easily from most things, you don't need it. Let's move along. We've got a Troubleshooters single action revolver, again with 10% damage while aiming and 25% less VATS AP cost. So, out of the situational effects, Troubleshooters is going to be one of the more desirable ones. If you're going to have a collection of these weapons, then Troubleshooters isn't bad, simply because you've got multiple scenarios that you can predict where you might use it. I do think they need to increase that a little bit to make it kind of worth the payoff, or worth the weight in your stash, but, you know, as it is, depending on where you're at in the game, you may have a lot of benefit from something like this situationally. Troubleshooters weapons are going to be great for nuke silo runs, encrypted, any number of, well, now you've got daily ops with robots in them, and then there's other events across the map with robots too, so you can kind of predict when you're going to use a weapon like this, and it's particularly beneficial for somebody who's a cowboy gun build. The nice thing about pistols in this game is that they're all pretty lightweight, and there's a perk to reduce their weight further. So even though they're not super powerful and you don't have all the mod options that you have with a lot of things, if you're going that route, having weapons with situational effects isn't bad. They're easy to carry around. Next up, we've got an AntiArmor black powder pistol with 50% limb damage and extra perception. So this one, I'm not in love with this one. Not in love with this one even a little bit. We saw in our weapon spotlight on Wednesday a bloodied black powder pistol with VATS hit chance increased and faster reload, and while it packed a huge punch, it was basically impossible to use in tightly packed areas. Now, maybe if you're with a group or something like that, you can get away with it, but it didn't work for me. The golf club was tough, the deep was tough. Anywhere that enemies are packed in tight is going to be a challenge with a weapon like this. It fires too slowly, it's too loud, so you can't sneak very well, and that's pretty much the extent of it. The anti-armor effect, it's a good effect to have. It ignores half your target's armor, that's fantastic, but it's not really going to do a whole lot for us here because we do really high base damage already. So we're already defeating a lot of our enemies' damage curve, or armor curve, I should say, by simply having a high damage weapon. Limb damage, it's not a bad thing to have, I guess, but it really doesn't do a lot for you here with a weapon like this. If you're not killing your enemy in one shot, you're basically dead. So you need to kill in one shot, which makes limb damage useless. All right, enough is enough. Let's move on. Okay, now this one's a little more interesting. Here we've got a bloodied Gatling plasma with limb damage and 90% reduced weight. This one's kind of interesting. So we've got the bloodied effect, of course, which is going to do a ton of damage. That's what everybody wants. But here we've also got limb damage. Now, normally I'm not a huge fan of limb damage on heavy weapons, or any ranged weapons for that matter. But in this case, it's not the worst thing to have. This isn't a weapon that deals a ton of damage per shot. You're going to hit targets multiple times. It also makes a lot of noise, so you're going to get mobs of enemies running at you. Having something like this where you can kind of target a little low and take out some legs and arms and slow your enemies down so they can't hurt you is not a bad thing. Would I prefer to have something like faster fire rate here? Certainly. But if I can't, this is probably my next best role on a heavy gun like this. Having 90% reduced weight is also a nice factor here. Something like this where there's some mods you can put on it that'll increase the weight, but it's not going to be a dramatic increase like it is on rifles where you put 6 or 7 different mods on. So that makes this easier to carry around, and even for a heavy gunner, some heavy gunners will use the bare arms perk to reduce the weight of their weapons, but on both of my heavy gun characters, the most I've ever been able to run is 1 point in that, so that's a nice perk to have. Let's move along and see what's next. Okay. So this is not a good day at the Purveyor, ladies and gentlemen. It just isn't. Suppressor's Harpoon Gun with VATS critical shots doing 50% more damage and 90% reduced weight. All right, looking at this again, I don't hate it as much as I did a second ago, but I still don't love it. The suppressor's effect on a weapon like this is fairly useless. This is definitely a one-shot kill type of weapon, so you're not going to suppress anything because your target's already going to be dead. VAT's critical shots doing more damage, though, that's a good one. And 90% reduced weight is a good one, and here's the scenario. If you are a heavy gunner, this gun benefits from heavy gun perks. You can also put a scope on it and use it like a sniper rifle. So if you want something that you can run around with, get some one-shot kills, be really efficient with, this is kind of a good setup. I'd love to have a different primary legendary effect on it, but that's critical shots doing more damage and better weight reduction to make it easier to carry around kind of makes it fit that mold really well. So I don't love this. I don't love the main effect, but I don't hate it as much as I did when I initially saw it. Let's move along. And next up, we've got a Mutant Slayer's Gatling laser with bashing damage and extra agility. Ugh, okay. So now, if this had 90% reduced weight, might put it in the category of that Gatling Plasma or that Harpoon Gun where in the right hands, situationally, it might be good to carry around. But with full weight on this thing, and once you get a couple of mods on it, it's not going to be very good. The Mutant Slayer's effect, 30% more damage to mutants, that's good for that situation, and it's one of the more desirable situational effects, but I just don't see it on the Gatling laser. These things are really underpowered now. Yes, the DPS on them is pretty good, but meaning you're doing a lot of damage quickly. The fire rate is fast, but they're just really underpowered. And if they get a damage boost, then maybe something like this will be a little more useful. Bashing damage is completely useless in every way. I've said it in almost every Scrip video, and I'll continue to do so. The game has basically no bashing damage, so increasing basically no damage by 40% still leaves you with basically no damage. What's the point of that? Change it. Make it bashing speed or bashing range or bashing area of effect. Make it useful for the melee enemy daily ops. Something to make it actually desirable for players to use, because right now it's just a wasted star. +1 agility, I guess that's fine. You get a little extra AP, who doesn't like that? But I'm not in love with this one. With 90% reduced weight, maybe it's okay. Without it, definitely going into the Scrip bin. Let's move along. We've got a few left. All right, and our next one is a Medic's Pipe Revolver with limb damage and faster reload. So this one's kind of interesting. I don't love it. It's not some kind of secret god roll weapon, but it might fill a particular niche. Let's say you are running a support build. You want to be the team medic. Maybe that's at events, maybe that's just general farming use, whatever the case might be. That's what you want to do. So a medic's weapon allows you to heal you and your group every time you get a VATS critical. So a weapon like this that doesn't do amazing damage, especially not if you're not targeting heads, could be a good one to do that with because you're going to get more shots. Having limb damage here means you might be better off targeting things like legs, where you can cripple enemies and slow them down so your group can attack them, which also means more shots because you're not doing max damage. And that therefore gives you more chances at VATS criticals, more healing, maybe makes that roll a little more effective. Maybe I'm also really stretching that to try and find a valid use case for this, but perhaps that's one way to do it. 15% faster reload helps too, but let's move along. And now we've got a Mutant Slayer's Western Revolver, again with limb damage and agility. So here I'm less enthused. Mutant Slayers, of course, is a situational effect, not the least desirable one. You've got events with super mutants, you've got daily ops with super mutants. Those things all make sense. Limb damage on a revolver, don't love it. I don't love it at all, but I guess it's better than getting faster fire rate, which probably doesn't really help you much at all. So I guess it's better than nothing. Extra agility is good. You'll get more AP for more shots in VATS. You'll be able to sprint a little more. But ultimately, the biggest problem here isn't the effects, it's the weapon. Cowboy guns in Fallout 76 just aren't very good. You can't suppress them, so you can't get sneak benefits. or you can, but not for very long. So that really limits the overall damage they can do. The DPS isn't very high because their fire rate isn't very high. So it leaves them in kind of an awkward position as more of a roleplay weapon. As such, a situational effect like Mutant Slayers might be useful. I'd like to see some other things going on here, but I guess it could be worse, but it's probably going to the Scrip bin. All right, I think we've got just one more left. Yep, let's see what we've got here. And our last roll of the day is a Mutant Slayer's Gatling Plasma with faster fire rate and faster movement speed while aiming. I think we've talked at length about the Mutant Slayer's situational effect. We get the point of that. 25% faster fire rate. That's always a good thing to have on a heavy weapon. Even if it is a Mutant Slayer's heavy weapon, it's going to increase your DPS significantly. And faster movement speed while aiming is also not a bad thing to have. If you aim down sights, your accuracy will be better, your shots will be tighter, you'll miss less, and you'll be more efficient. But a lot of heavy gunners, including myself, often just hipfire the weapon. So having something like this that kind of gives me an incentive to aim down sights and move a little quicker, maybe that's an improvement as well. Don't love the situational effect. I'd rather have 90% reduced weight here as a 3rd star, but I guess it could be worse. It's still going to go to the Scrip bin for me, but if you had no good legendary heavy gun and you wanted one, well, faster fire rate gives you at least something. And that, ladies and gentlemen, will bring us to the end of this visit to the Purveyor. It was definitely not one of our best. We got a lot of garbage today, but we got to talk about a few interesting things too. So we'll take what we get when we can get it. Sometimes we win, sometimes we lose. That's why we go back and play the slot machine every single week. Remember, if you like videos like this and you want to see more, do go ahead and subscribe, hit the like button, leave a comment, follow me on Twitter so you know whenever I go live on stream or post a new video. I promise I do my best to update that with most of them at least. Sometimes I still forget, but you all get the point. I do hope I see you next time. Till then, I'm Fisty McRib.